All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Beyond the Basics, Maximizing Salesforce Adoption and Data Integrity in Higher Ed. Today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Salesforce and their wonderful partner, FormAssembly, and produced by SmartBrief. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with SmartBrief, a future B2B company, and I'm so happy that I get to be your moderator today because today we have an absolutely incredible group of expert presenters collected, and they're going to share some of their real world experiences in higher ed. We're going to unpack some of the challenges, the opportunities, the best practices, and the possibilities in front of all of you today. We're going to explore how you can better engage with students across their life cycle, from applicants to alumni. With the help of our expert presenters, we're going to outline those key trends in CRMs, data collection and management, data management, very important, and outline how you can empower your staff and faculty to become part of that data collection process, right? And better serve their students. So this is a huge and integrated process, a really fascinating conversation, lots of layers, really important and impactful. I cannot wait to dive in. If you couldn't tell, I am ready to go. But I want to start out with just a few housekeeping points that are going to help you get the most out of your time here with us today. So let's take a little tour of the console together. Where I want to start out is right over there in that chat tab. So if you haven't already done so, say hi. Hi again, George. Ah, I love that. Nice to see you again, George. We've got Leona, we've got Benny here, we've got Michelle and Melissa. I saw people chiming in from Egypt all the way to California. We got a whole awesome crew. Hey, Bizrat. Hey, Matt. Hey, Talia. I love this. Okay, keep those highs and hellos coming. Hi, Jesse. From another Jesse. It's so great to see all of you. And this is what we want. As we go through our conversation today, we want to hear from you. We want you to be connecting, because the best way to learn is, as you all know, to create these collaborative learning environments where we get to share our thoughts and ideas together. So the chat window is where we do that. The chat window is where we're connecting, we're emojiing, we're saying hi and hello, we're sharing ideas and our own personal experiences. That's all happening there in the chat window. Whoa, we've got some fun layouts. All right, and then we've also got the Q&A tab. So the Q&A tab is where you can actually ask questions directly of our wonderful speakers. So we're going to get into a fun and interactive kind of roundtable style discussion today, and your questions are going to help inform the direction that we go. So please do get those questions in. That's the Q&A tab. So chat, highs, hellos, hanging out. Q&A tab is where you're asking those questions directly of our speakers. Both very important, so keep those rolling in. Now, right in the middle of those two tabs is the Docs tab. Now, the Docs tab is absolutely full of cool resources and takeaways. You are going to want to spend some time with these handouts after we leave. So I promise you, those will all come in very handy. Make sure you've opened those up. Hold on to those tabs. Don't go too far down that reading rabbit hole yet, because we've got a whole awesome webinar in front of you. But when we wrap, you're going to want to come back to those. So make sure you've got those docs open. The last thing I want to tell you about in the console, we do have a $250 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. So stay tuned for that. You do need to be with us all the way throughout the webinar, and you do need to meet those SmartBrief terms and conditions. Now, the T's and C's are listed for you in the Docs tab. So if you don't know what those are, you can find the full T's and C's in there for you as well. Now, I do want to point out two final things about the console before we get our wonderful speakers introduced and on out here. One is that if you're having any technical issues in our session, I hope this doesn't come up, but you know, the full moons or the gremlins, whatever happens, if something is going a little wonky on your screen, the first thing you're going to try is a browser refresh. I promise that that is going to clear most of those gremlins out. So try that browser refresh. If that doesn't work, you can also try light mode. Light mode is available on your audience console. Give that a shot. Now, in a worst case scenario, if you're really struggling and none of those have worked, post in the chat. And the wonderful Arena Chen is here with us today, and she is keeping everything running smoothly behind the scenes. And Arena will be there to help you out if you have any questions. So you can post for her in that chat. The other thing is closed caption. Obviously, very important. We have closed captioning available on our audience console. So make sure, if that would be helpful for you, you've got that engaged. If you are using your first language, great. If you just want that extra little visual boost, or hey, you want to start practicing a new language, you can pick any language you like. So make sure you've got that closed captioning enabled if that would be helpful for you. And with that, let's get rolling with our session. I want to introduce our three main speakers that are going to be engaging in our roundtable today. And then we're going to bring out a special guest star as well. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But our speakers that we've got here with us, Andrew Mugford, project manager at Tyndale University. We've got Peter Bernardi, chief executive officer at ElevateActual, and Elicia Suren, assistant director of CRM, University of Colorado Boulder, lead School of Business. We've got a whole wonderful crew here with us. What an awesome lineup of speakers. And before I bring them out, here is our special guest star feature of the day who's sneaking in the lineup, and that is the one and only Josh Straley, Senior Product Marketing Manager at FormAssembly. Josh, come on down. Oh, Josh, you're gonna have to move yourself on screen because I can't move you on screen. I think we have you on a non-speaker link, Josh. Do you have the go on stage button? You gotta love live theater. Right, this is nope. Josh doesn't have Josh is shaking his head at me. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna bring Josh out at the end of the webinar. We're gonna flip the tables. This is live theater, right? We're gonna get Josh a new link. We're gonna get Josh in the console lined up as a speaker so that he can tell you a little bit more about FormAssembly, and we'll sort of backtrack and backfill the information. This is a reverse learning plan, right? A reverse lesson plan. So we're gonna bring Josh out at the end, so everyone stay tuned for that. In the meantime, though, we have our wonderful panel discussion coming up. So let's jump into that. Andrew, come on down. Elicia, come on down. Let's get Peter on out here with me. Here we go. Here's our wonderful lineup. All right, crew, welcome to the webinar.
Hi.
Hello. Now, I'm going to do this right away because I'm very hopeful that we get to see more. Peter, you should all know, has the best executive assistant around. She is a very, very cute puppy who may be making appearances. So let's all vote for a guest spotlight later. Peter, just letting you know, if puppy comes into the scene, we would like to stop the entire webinar, derail whatever.
Of course.
Yeah. And immediately focus on your dog. All right, well, I want to start out with a little bit of a round of introductions. We've obviously done the names and titles, but there's so much more to each of your stories. So what I'd like to do is just kind of, I'm going to go down the row as you are in my order. So we're going to go Andrew, Elicia, and then Peter. And I'd love for you to just give a little context to the perspective that you're bringing to our conversation today. Andrew, you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah, I'm Andrew. They call me the digital marketing specialist at Tyndale University, which is in Toronto, Canada. And I've been in higher ed for 11 and a half years, working in admissions as a recruiter. And now I do all things Salesforce. And we have one org in admissions, and we're launching another org as we speak that I'm project managing for advancement. And I have no time. Send me chocolate. I need snacks.
Please send help and chocolate to Andrew. I love it. All right, Elicia.
All right, so my name is Elicia Suren. I am the Assistant Director of CRM for the lead School of Business at the University of Colorado in beautiful, sunny Boulder. I love data. That's how I got my into CRM, if you will, as I found a love of data and analysis and data-driven decision-making, helping people get clarity on what they need through data. To me, it's kind of the core of, a lot of organizations. So a little bit more about the School of Business and our CRM org. So we're Salesforce org. It's 12 years old. It's quite mature. We only have one, and it serves 150 staff, no faculty at this time. And it's really there to serve staff who serve students, but then also the academic and faculty management operations at the school as well. So it's quite robust. And we're on Sales and Service Cloud. So we're kind of, a little different. We were here long before EDA and Education Cloud. So it's a beautiful custom org that we're really proud of. So happy to share more about our journey today.
Excited to learn more. And Peter, I have to say, as you jump in, both Josh and Millie got equal shout outs in the chat.
Yeah, so we'll have to see We'll take a little vote at the end, who the most popular panelist is.
Josh or Millie. Yeah.
Exactly.
Who do we want to hear from at the end of the webinar?
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I'm Peter Bernardi, CEO and co-founder of ElevateActual. I have been in Salesforce since 2015 when I actually started with FormAssembly. So I have deep FormAssembly knowledge. Very early there, was the 12th employee, and then flipped over to the service side with ElevateActual. And since then, we've done all sorts of higher education implementation. Kind of similar to Elicia's background, we've seen the good, the bad, the multi-org, the single org, total custom, half EDA, and we have 7 education cloud implementations ongoing right now. So that's a lot and enjoyable. But yeah, we are happy to partner with tons of universities across the US and abroad, obviously featuring our favorite client, the Lead School of Business at the University of Colorado Boulder. So we've done everything from the big and the tiny. You've seen FormAssembly lots of different ways, used FormAssembly lots of different ways, and should be an exciting conversation today.
I love this. The new scale that I'm using for difficulty is going to be good, bad, and send chocolate, Andrew. I think that's the way to go. Well, we're going to jump into kind of a roundtable style. I'm going to throw some questions at you. We're going to get some questions in from the audience, and we're just going to roll through some content information because, as you know, what Josh and I were going to talk to the audience about today is one of the coolest things is really getting the stories from the trenches, from the front lines, and that's all of you. So we absolutely want your perspective and kind of where things are at for you, which is where I'd like to start out. I want to start out with a little bit of a temperature check. If we're looking around the current data climate in higher ed specifically, could you guys give us an idea? And Elicia, maybe I'll kick things off with you. What are your organizations focused on? What are schools thinking about right now?
So I'll just say, I think every school or every subgroup at a university, they're on their own journey, right? So like what I say today, take nuggets from it, but recognize that like we are a 12-year org. So, our data journey, we're quite far along. So just want to give that context, but I'd say, security and governance of data. I hope universities never lose sight of that. That to me is really a core principle. You got to keep your data secure, but you also need to make sure there's proper governance and that there's an understanding of why governance is important. Accessibility of that data. So we're currently at CU Boulder, we're trying to unsilo data where it has become siloed. And then I think really AI of it all, I think something I hear a lot and I agree with is if you're going to go down an AI journey, whether it's an LLM or an agent of any kind, it's only going to be as good as the data that you can give it. And so making sure you have managed data, accessible data, documented data, clean data, like it all kind of starts there. It's your foundation. And if your foundation is crumbling or, you've got a basement over here and a slab over there, it's going to be really hard to build up. So I'd say, Peter, you're working with a lot of different folks. Is there anything you'd add?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with governance. That is probably the number one topic that we see come up. And right alongside that with accessibility, we're doing a lot of stuff right now with Data Cloud of bringing those unified profiles together. So we don't have a marketing system sitting completely disconnected from student records, and planned giving is over there in their own org, also kind of doing their own thing on their own journey, Elicia, like you said. So I think really it's connectivity is maybe the one big broad word that we're looking at. And it always comes down to integration strategy, which is everyone's least favorite but most important topic to talk about. Andrew, I'd be interested to see how things are going in Canada.
So data is my favorite Star Trek character. But more importantly, I'm going to take a bit of a different tack with this because we have an org that we've had since 2018, but now we're implementing this new org. So we're T-minus about 42 days to the go live. And one of the things that I think is really interesting for an organization that is when you start think we're moving from a really arcane, you can't even call it a database, like this really arcane container for data, and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with Salesforce. But the people that have been stuck inside this horrible monster of an escape room of data, is there's so many possibilities now, they almost don't know what to do with it. You know, because we are implementing account engagement, education cloud for advancement. These are things like all their data was centralized. They had to go to one person to get what they wanted out of reports. And now they're like, can I write a report to do? And I'm like, you can write anything you want. And it blows, they can't comprehend the amount of things. And it's interesting because I think for a lot of us who do this for a living, a lot of this stuff almost seems boring. It's like, yeah, I can write you a report, that's fine. Right? But we forget how powerful these tools are if you've never had anything close to it. So that's a different tack on what questions are being asked. One of the questions is, if you're stuck in the 1865 and your database is stuck down the well, I'm trying real hard here.
You're doing great.
It's really hard to, it's just like, it's night and day. It's magic and not magic to ask the questions of what do? We can do anything. And then of course, within that is the, okay, well, now we need to prioritize what's the most effective and plan out for the next 1, 2, 3 years in terms of what do we implement, what are we going to have to buy in terms of other products. You know, I already know some things they're going to want to buy once they figure out they can do things. So that's one of the things that I'm dealing with personally.
Okay, so I like we're getting, so governance, accessibility, clear data foundations, and I like, Elicia, I like the example of like you're building a shed, but you've built your garage over here. Like making sure you're aligning, and I think intentionality with that is a really important step. You know, especially I think right now because of the democratization around the conversation with AI, it's anyone and everyone can get involved, but if you don't have a plan, you know, should you? Are you doing this in the right way? Are you doing this in a way that makes sense for your organization? And starting with, and Andrew, what I'd actually like to ask you to dig on a little bit more, and I'd love to hear from everyone on this. You really hit hard on data being the foundation of that, and the opportunities around AI. And anything, and creating those customized experiences. So let's talk about siloed data, though, because I think that is a big stumbling block for a lot of organizations. So how are you seeing some of the institutions that you're working with? And I like you're speaking on behalf of all of Canada, apparently, as Peter has given you the microphone for Canada. How have you seen institutions address siloed data?
Universities, when you look at their structure, their org chart, a lot of them, not us, we're perfect, but other schools
Obviously
are really a collection of schools that are under this umbrella. And so you often don't have centralized much of anything. Now, we're a small school, so we do have fewer silos. But for instance, my org in admissions and recruiting talks to the system, or what we call our student information system in the registration office, but there's no, the connection is done through FormAssembly, Informatica. So Informatica is the middleware that goes between the two. So I don't really have direct visibility into their data. I have access to it, I can go look at it, but if I want to integrate things, we have to build out that integration. So one of the things that I want to see is we've got the second org, I want a third org, I want probably a fourth org. Now, what that really means is it might be the same education cloud org, just adding on the modules. But I want to see it all in one place, because I want to see it all. And there's lots of roadblocks to that, and some of them make complete sense. People are sensitive to privacy, to Alicia's point, and security, right? And you have to assure them that even though people can log into the same org, you can hide what people see, and so it's a very long process. But of course, there's not just things that people shouldn't be able to see, like an admissions counselor has no business seeing financial records, but it's also stuff I don't want to see because it gets in my way. I don't want to see student life records. I don't want to see student retention records if I work in admissions. It just gets in my way. So I think people, it's just one of these things that people know what they know. They are used to it. It works for them. And kind of like what I mentioned earlier, when you start talking about, yeah, but what it could do, oftentimes it's really hard to break down that mindset, break down the walls, and get them to fill the well up with sand so you can, I don't know where that was going, but
back in the well. We're back in the well,
yeah,
Andrew.
back in the well. You want to get out of the well, fill it with sand, and move into Alicia's really nice building, and
which is on a solid foundation.
On a solid foundation,
exactly.
With a really cute dog.
With a really, just wrap it up with a bow. Very nice.
Oh.
This is great. This is my favorite webinar so far. Okay, so Andrew, I think that's some really great points. I'd actually like to tag in Elicia and Peter on this as well, if this is something that you've come across.
Yeah. I loved how you put it just now, Andrew, the piece about like how people are thinking about their data, right? There's an interesting ownership with data of like, it's my data. And we see that a lot at the business school, where it's like, yes, you help manage the data, you maintain the data, but your data is valuable to not just you, it's valuable to the whole school and then the larger organization at a whole. So I think when it comes to siloed data, it's just not where the data lives, where it's being maintained. And who knows how many Excel spreadsheets are out there that aren't in a system of record. That's another one, but like, it's more about the mindset of data. It's unsiloing people's minds about data, what it is, how you can access it, why it's important to share, especially if there's no privacy or security concerns with that data. It's trying to help people understand that it is a resource, and it's a really wonderful, beautiful resource. I'll just say this before I hand it off to Peter here. We really benefit at CU Boulder from a very long-term forward-thinking data strategy. We are 4 campuses, CU Boulder being one of them, and we have University Information Systems, and they manage all centrally managed or data in centrally managed systems. And then they manage data for each particular campus. So we have one place that is managing the data, a lot of the data, not all the data, but a lot of the data for Boulder and the other 3 campuses across the CU system. So we have a really healthy data strategy, but I think the key is it was an organizational wide strategy with one governing body that then really sets policy and allows for access if you give them a good cause. Like it's a beautiful system to be part of. But even with this, we still have silos. So, but that's, I think we just continue to be like, okay, what's next? Chip it off. Once you find a silo, break it down, grab a hammer, grab a sledgehammer, go to town. Let's see if we can break it apart. I'm going to break down Andrew's well a little bit, take a hammer to it. So Peter, do you have any wells, silos?
so many wells. I wish more institutions would take that kind of forward-looking approach to it, where we see quite often a lot of the times for our kind of brand new Salesforce implementations, we're coming from a legacy system, a homegrown system, something on-prem, so it's not even cloud-based, and talk about challenges of access for that, for sure. But it is really empowering a single group, however you make up that group, to make those institution-wide decisions and say, this is the direction we're going. We're all going to move in that direction, and really having that internal change management to buy into that idea that it isn't my data, right? Like Elicia said, I would want to hold on to it and keep it to ourselves, because if it's not mine, then it's gone. Right? We can share that. And just because we're removing the silo doesn't remove your protection around that. You can still have a higher level of governance around it. You can still be, have that read-write permission, and everyone else is just reading. But we do want to, empower users across campus to have access in that regard. And that's what we see a lot with the student information system. Like Andrew said, that's probably the biggest silo we run into, are those legacy systems that are really hard to integrate with. You need a middleware tool like Informatica, like Zapier, Jitterbit, something like that. We would run into those a lot because it's really hard to move off that SIS. And that ultimately is where that data is going to reside, because that's kind of the heartbeat of the organization, is who's registered, financial aid, everything there. So if you can have that governance, that internal buy-in to keep moving in that direction to eventually get to one point of truth, that's kind of the end game, something that seems like CU is doing quite well. But that's really the best way to address that, is have that shared mindset that this is our data, not my data.
Go
Jess,
ahead, Andrew.
can I just answer one of the questions I see in the Q&A? Because I think it sort of ties into this. And it says, our students are involved in many different groups, and each group needs tons of data points in their various forms. How do you structure Salesforce to collect form data for various student services at various times? For example, do you have a student services object with records, so financial aid, international retention, etc., consensually collect and view data from various forms? And so the answer to that is you hire Peter, and Peter will lead you through all. No, I'm kidding.
Which
I
was
do not get paid for that.
Jesse's question was, can you share some pros and cons for change management? And you're suggesting the answer is hire Peter.
I love this webinar. This is great.
Don't tell the consultant we're using. So they're fine. No, okay. So the answer would be yes. I mean, Education Cloud, if you haven't actually looked into it, has different, what I call modules. So they've got different parts of it for those different functions. But in terms of the back-end technical functionality, I mean, FormAssembly through the connectors, whether it's the pre-fill connector, which is my favorite, or the send connector, you can pull in and send whatever you want to wherever you want in Salesforce. And in fact, if you could have a form sending to, our application, which is done through FormAssembly, creates or updates, 5 or 6 different objects. So this is entirely doable. And in fact, one of the really cool things that I've been doing with FormAssembly is using it as a way to not have to buy extra licenses. So we have a interview review process. So rather than give everyone a license to be able to go in and look at the data, which is on several different objects anyway, they get a unique URL that has an ID number on it. They click on that, it pre-fills a FormAssembly form. The interviewers can go and enter whatever data, ratings, what have you. They hit submit, it goes in. So they've seen all the information, like pre-interview comments, grades, everything they need to see. They don't need an extra Salesforce license, and it's exactly what's in Salesforce. So you're not creating duplicate data. You hit submit, you're getting their updated information. So there are some ways that, in terms of siloing, you could say, well, the data is siloed in Salesforce, because that's the other thing too. You don't want Salesforce to become its own silo. This department has a legitimate need for it, but licenses, y'all, are expensive. So, but we can use a tool like FormAssembly to securely and privately share this information outside the org, and still be able to give them the information they need and push it back into the org with, whatever the interview results are for that particular case.
Yeah, and Michelle is saying that they have a similar system set up for their faculty reviewers. They don't have full Salesforce access, just enough to complete their tasks. So a little bit of access management strategizing allows you to have a lot more global access to information in a way that is still hitting the compliance and governance needs. Jesse saying seconding that as well. That's actually, Andrew, maybe let's pivot a little bit. This is the theme of our webinar. We're going to pivot, and which immediately for like any friends, people who grew up in the 2000s are that. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Elicia. That was like right there. Let's get into Salesforce, because that is where we want to go with this. And maybe Peter, I'll ask you to kind of kick this one off for us, especially because you're coming with this wide breadth of information from all kinds of different end user type experiences. So thinking about Salesforce, how would you suggest for folks in the audience out there that they're really getting the most out of their Salesforce CRM?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is know what you have. Just as Andrew said, licenses, y'all, like that is number 1, 2, and 3 is know what you have access to, know which groups are going to get that access, who's going to use what functionality, so that you're not limiting your financial investment, but making the right financial investment to the right types of those modules, right? Especially looking at Education Cloud, you move from a sales and service cloud org that has education data architecture in it. Education data architecture is just that, it's a data architecture. You're now moving into Education Cloud, where a lot of the stuff that used to be free is not free. It is behind certain licensing, and making the most of it is knowing what you have, knowing that the right users are in the right place, that any custom that you're putting on top of core is serving a purpose. We're not building for the sake of building and then going down, a super code heavy rabbit hole that you now have to completely unspool when you need to implement a different module. We're not having that conflicting automation. And then with the theme of the day of getting rid of those silos and having access to data is, what is your integration strategy? Salesforce is only as good as the data that you give it, just like the AI tools are only as good as the org is set up to be. So if Salesforce is being hydrated with student recruitment data from a separate system, well, maybe we'll bring that in natively. That could be a good implementation. Like Andrew mentioned, build that application on FormAssembly, push it all to Salesforce. Once they actually confirm their spot, are ready to show up on campus, that's when it gets pushed to the student information system. So Salesforce is doing a lot of that interoperability, taking data from FormAssembly, data generated from itself, and then pushing back what it needs somewhere else. So we have a well-defined use for Salesforce, and we're maximizing that use.
All right, I love that. Andrew, what do you think? How can you make the most out of your Salesforce area? You've already given us some ideas. Anything else you want to add
on? This might seem really obvious, but I would say one of the ways you make sure you have, my story is that I went from being a recruiter to doing Salesforce, as opposed to being a Salesforce person that had to learn higher ed. If those opportunities are there, if you're a manager, I'd look at them. Higher ed is a very unique world, and the more experience you have, your Salesforce person can have, I think is really helpful. If you are hiring a consultant or a partner, getting one that has higher ed experience is going to be really, really important, because they might, if you're buying it again for recruitment, which is sales, but it's a very different type of sales. And so if you just hire someone, who knows sales, you might have a hard time translating and hearing each other, because your cycles are different. You're not a Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 business in admissions. Our cycles are very different. So I think looking for someone who has higher ed experience, either in a partner or internally, but also to have someone internally whose job it is, and this was really how I defined my job when I first got it, was how do we extend the org? Because it was a new org at the time, newish. And my whole job was, I went out and I just met with every vendor who had a product that I thought was cool. I was in Slack groups and community groups and just listening to what other people do. And I would just learn. And because I knew the business, I had a sense of what would be helpful and what we could do with it, as opposed to saying, hey, other person, here's this cool tool. Do you think you could use this? And then adding that to their busy schedule. Whereas I can sort of act like that clearinghouse, if you will. I take it upon myself just to know what's out there, so that if people come to me and say, is there a way to do X? And I say, yeah, there is. Do you have a way to pay for X is another question. But so I always tell people, when it comes to getting the most of it, when people come to me and say, I don't know if this is possible, I always say to them, just assume it's possible. Don't try and come to me with the solution of how you want it done, because you're not getting another checkbox. But tell me what problem you're trying to solve, and we'll work on that. Because there's very little outside of the biggest impediment for me personally is cost, because a lot of enterprise tools are just priced for enterprises that are, have the money, and not for the like in our case, a nonprofit. So.
Yeah, I love that. I want to hang on to that thought, Andrew, because I want to come back to challenges in just a second. But Elicia, I'd love to hear from you some opportunities on maximizing before we get to the downsides, the negatives.
Yeah. So I came into an established org, and I guess the playbook was laid out way before I came in. I've been at Leeds for about 4 years now. So what I learned though about our Salesforce is it was very intentionally made to be the backbone of the business school. So that doesn't mean everything goes into it, mind you. It is always thought about. Does it make sense for this to live in Salesforce? What long-term value would this give the school if it were in Salesforce? Whether it's retention of staff or future data needs. So it's always very forward-looking and also very intentional. And so for us, it's kind of that, should this be in Salesforce? And it's really the question of why shouldn't this be in Salesforce? And we kind of work from there. So we're very much a Salesforce first school, but also being really mindful of like, can this grow? Thinking holistically of like, who else might need to use this in the future? We have a phrase we use on my team quite often, which is, let's have our future selves thank us, which is kind of that reminder of like, are we developing ourselves into a future nightmare? Are we is someone going to abandon this because the data is actually not valuable? So just some thoughts of how, you can really make sure your CRM stays healthy, and it's about support, it's about conversations, being critical of yourselves as well, and really taking the time to think and step back and is this the right direction? And if it's not, so be it.
A lot of mindset is coming up in this conversation. And I think, Peter, you called out the change management side of this. And I think the psychology in all of this is really important. And Elicia, even, when we were talking about unsiloing your mind to unsilo your data, which feels like a cool, like 80s rock song. But I love that. And I think we're kind of hitting on that in a few different ways. That might be, Andrew, you mentioned cost being one of the challenges. And I think mindset also being, and some change management could also be one of the challenges. I'm wondering if I can ask you guys to kind of dig in a little bit on those in terms of maybe potential obstacles that you've seen stopping organizations from getting to that point where they're able to maximize the use of Salesforce within their institution. Andrew, I'm kicking that to you to start.
Okay. So sorry, I was just trying to answer a question.
I know the chat is hopping. It's like, and kudos to all of you. All the speakers are also answering questions on text and in chat, so they're multitasking like crazy. Anyways, chocolate for you to follow. Andrew, continue.
Can you just restate the question again? I'm sorry.
I can, Andrew. Other than you had mentioned cost being one of the obstacles. So if you want to elaborate on that, and if there's anything else, what do you see as being the obstacles to really maximizing Salesforce?
Internal willingness. Let's say, I never talk like this, but I'll say it here. Our vertical is fully aligned, our vertical, but the rest of the departments don't necessarily dovetail That's an oldie but a goodie. No,
I like
I
it.
think so we have, an org that is in admissions, or we have an org that is in external relations, but they do have to have hooks into other departments because everyone deals with students. Well, almost every department. And so our new org will have to have connections into our business office for accounting. Our admissions org has to have hooks into registration and its student services to a limited degree, and some other things. And so I always think of, like, say, where else can we extend this reasonably? Because I think going to the mindset piece, think twice before you cut once, or build that new thing, because it's really, well, it's not, it can be a pain in the butt to go back and fix your mistake that I'll give an example from when I was brand new. I used FormAssembly to put our reference forms online so that we would automatically send them to referees. They'd fill them out, they'd go into Salesforce. What I found out later was I had created a second object in Salesforce that was already there for references, and I didn't know it because it was labeled tests. And in my mind, it's not a test, so it shouldn't. Anyway. Well, now I've got all this data in this second object that I don't technically need. So I can move it all into the old one, but I'm not going to. It's just going to bother me the rest of my career. So there is a certain aspect of, if you are taking over an org, there are things you're just not going to know. I mean, all of our orgs are going to be complex if you're in higher ed, and there will be things you don't know. Some mistakes you'll have to fix, some are just not worth it. So, and that's okay. You can join my support group. But in terms of maximizing, it really is just, everything is about human relations. It's all about, somebody asked a question in the Q&A about change management. And part of my answer was, you need senior buy-in, at least whatever senior buy-in you need for your project. And if you are going to go outside of your vertical, if you will, you might need the senior buy-in of whatever senior management is over that other thing. And then your two seniors may need to talk, where they need to convince each other. So it can be, but it's such a cliche, but it is 100% true. It's almost every problem can be solved with effective, consistent, constant communication and clear. Where we all get in trouble, where feelings get hurt, where projects get derailed, or when we don't talk, when we don't explain. This is, I think this is a big thing I've noticed with partners. Some partners, not Peter, is oftentimes partners they have an implementation strategy that they use. Basically, I don't want to call it cookie cutter, but they have a strategy for how they like to do things. Yeah. The problem is they're so used to it, they don't always explain it properly to their client. And so sometimes we have to go back and say, what does this word mean? We don't use this word here. We might call something else in Canada. I mean, I don't know. Right. So we just have to have them translate. Oh, well, when we mean that, we're talking about this. They're like, oh, now I understand. So it's just sort of that constant communication. One of the skills, if you're an admin, is, can you talk to technical people and can you talk to normal people?
Yep.
Can you help your end users understand what you're saying using different language than what you would say to, well, anyone on this call probably.
Yeah.
Right? If I talk to Elicia about an object, she knows what an object is. When I first started, I was like, what a weird word to use, an object, right? And it is weird. So don't expect your end users to understand what an object is. So at least not without educating them. So everything is communication. I mean, change management, anything that goes wrong with change management is essentially some form of communication, either interpersonally or the technology you're using isn't communicating properly.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'd echo that. And it's something too that Andrew's touched on before, but like the vocabulary of higher education is very specific. And like you said, like object means different things. Inquiry means different things to different institutions. Not all inquiries are the same. Not all applications are the same. Not all reviews are the same. And so what we've seen a lot is that our group would come in mid implementation, either trying to roll it yourself with a different partner that doesn't know higher ed. So I think this biggest challenge in terms of maximizing that use of Salesforce is maximizing your implementations, and that's using people that know what they're talking about. You can have all the Salesforce knowledge and implementation skill and developers in the world, but if they don't really understand higher ed, it is going to fall down. And like Andrew said, if you're not communicating in that way, clear, concise, consistent on the nature of higher ed, have people that have worked at higher eds or have been through 5, 6, 7, 8 implementations, especially when moving from, and I'm sure Elicia could talk about this with their kind of legacy org, something not on Education Cloud into Education Cloud. You need to understand what are the old terms, what are the new terms, how do they translate, what automation is in place that's going to be a roadblock there, because you might go down a path building something custom that now is standard. And so now you have two conflicting automations running that are on the same objects, on the same fields, listening to the same triggers that are trying to do two different things. Yeah, Elicia, I'd be interested to see your take on it from jumping into an org that seems a little predestined from before you were there.
I think what you both shared really resonated. And I think what I see over and over again is the people component. Like it really is critical because they're the users of your org. So we're a unique IT team where our highest value is customer service. Like that is our cardinal rule. That is our North Star. Like, so, and because it's like without people using our org, there is no org. Like that's how I think about it. So yeah, I think the maximization, it's constant user engagement. It is grounding my team in, is that a problem looking for a solution or a solution looking for a problem? Because you came up with a great solution, but what problem is it solving for? Versus we have a problem in hand that we can solve when we have the ability to solve. So I don't know, it's keeping us focused on, I think of it like it's an emergency room, right? I've got someone in one group, maybe it's advising, and they are just like, they're hitting the emergency room every day, like different wounds. And we're just like patching them up, moving them on. That's a group that we probably need to focus on. That's a group that through our ticket queue or through other means, they're saying like, hey, things are not working the way we see them. Can you help us? Can you help us? So it's, I don't know, when it comes to maximizing, it's your people, and it's really listening to your people and having an understanding of what their pain points are. And is it systemic? If it's systemic, you got a nice project on your hands that can then really like meet more people than just one small group. All right, I kind of lost myself there, but really it's people. So I was like, I went all over the map. But to put a bow in that, I will just say something we started focusing on, like, I don't know, 2 years ago, that I'm starting to see some benefits from is institutional resiliency through training, knowledge sharing, documentation, and making sure people know what their processes are, how they work, how to get to data. So that's the thing that I think, you have the CRM, you have good CRM administrative teams, but you also need the translators, the people who can help enable people to use technology, not be afraid of technology or data. And that takes work, and that takes a different set of skills. But it's, in my opinion, if you want to maximize your Salesforce, people got to use it. They got to see it as a valuable tool and something that makes their lives easier. So it's the people. Keep an ear out.
Something else I'll say too in terms of people is you need to have some. So I'm a solo admin for 2 orgs. So the speed of implementation once our partner's gone is the speed at which I can get things done. Now, I mean, I like to think I'm fairly reasonably good at my job, but if you want things to be done faster, you have to pay for it. You have to either have a team I'm jealous of anyone who can. I always say we in my emails, like there's more than me, or you're hiring a partner or what have you. But that's an investment too. These are not really. You can run, to Alicia's point about, you can run sort of a set it and forget it org for a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of my sort of priorities is when people ask me for a feature is how much do I have to be involved? Because if it's something that I've got to be there to do, and I like to take vacation, I may say no, or I may say you've got to be okay with this not happening 1 week if I'm away, or you got to train people or whatever. But like, it's also the team, whatever you have internally to manage the org.
Yeah, and I think, where I was going to ask you guys to go next was to get into sort of some of the best practices around implementation. I actually think you guys have taken that from going into the challenges and then actually sort of addressing those challenges as we laid them out. So you've been one step ahead of me on this one. Okay, two things in my brain equally taking up space. One is how many questions I have that I want to ask you. And the second one is the little red blinking clock that is counting down and unfortunately counting down our seconds. So we are in our very last minutes. And what I kind of want to do, and we still need to get Josh and we still haven't seen Millie. So I don't know. We've got lots to do left. But what we're going to do is kind of a lightning round. And I'd like to ask each one of you to give us, as you look ahead, and pull out your crystal balls, I'd like to get an idea for what the future of higher ed tech, what you see that roadmap looking like. And, is it just all AI, nothing but AI? Are there facets to this? And just kind of do a quick round robin on the future of higher ed tech. Let's kick it off with Peter on that one.
Yeah, I think AI is definitely a complement. It is probably not the one-stop solution many people think it will be. I think taking a very narrow strategy first is let's build an Agentforce agent that is strictly going to handle students who have already applied and fill that gap between application and can confirm, is get them to enrollment, essentially. So here's your enrollment management focused, knowledge article based agent. So we're still in the infancy for sure. It's moving that way, and the org needs to be set up to support it. But I think top of funnel at recruitment, it's kind of obvious, and then student support as well, student success, layering it on top of the student success module in Education Cloud are definitely the two uses we see now. So very much still early days, and we'll see how much adoption there is there, but especially in recruitment.
Love that. All right, Elicia, what do you think?
Oh man, I mean, I feel like technology and higher ed are just intertwined now, but maybe that's a biased viewpoint being at a business school and a technologist. But I don't know. I think, I feel like there's a hot topic every few months, right? Whether it's AI or data or security. So I know that the world will keep moving and higher ed will do its best to keep up. And I think, as long as there's an investment in data and technology, that'll serve higher ed. And with AI, I think if you leverage it strategically, if you do it discreetly, kind of how Peter mentioned, like you have a really narrow use case you start it with, it's a great place to start, just to see what's possible. Because maybe it can do more than you would think. Maybe it provides a lot of value with very little development. So I'm trying to be more AI curious myself. And because I do think it can help, especially student-facing staff, people who are in appointments, they're meeting with students, they don't have a lot of time. I'm looking at it as how can we make their lives better and enhance their working world, and by consequence, the students' lives as well. So that's where I see the use of AI as a tool for people to use to make their lives better and focus on what's important.
I like that. The Iron Man suit. All right, Andrew, what do you got? What's your way ahead glasses telling you?
Speaking of Iron Man, I'm training for my first Iron Man in 2027.
Hey,
Nice.
So, so I fully admit I am an AI skeptic. I use it. I'm waiting for the bubble to break. I'm on our Senate's AI subcommittee. trying to figure out what to do about students in AI. So this is going to be a topic that infiltrates the entire institution. Having said that, I think there's potential for it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not imagining enough. I'm also not convinced what's going to be around a year from now. But listen, I mean, there's some very cool tools that can help, that I think can be helpful. But again, this is also, for me personally, it's a bit of a bandwidth issue. I'm not getting a lot of questions about it from those above me. Wondering how we use it in Salesforce. And I also think a huge problem for it in especially at least in Ontario where I am, where higher ed budgets are very, very stretched right now, is AI is still way too expensive. Like, it's absurdly expensive. So I think we've got to wait for that to come down a bit to see wider spread adoption, which maybe this news with DeepSeek will help do that. But so we'll see. I'm not getting a lot of requests to use it in any direct way to integrate it. I use it to help write my formulas if I can't figure out where I've forgotten the comma. So the uses are there. What I'd say the most important thing is institutions need to review and update their privacy policies, good practices around what data you're allowed to put into AI. So like, I only put in depersonalized data. Funny enough, I will use AI to create fake phone numbers and email addresses that I then put into data before I upload it to the AI. So I think those are really good practices that you should be at a starting place. But there's a lot of gray areas in AI, and we haven't seen a lot of this go through the courts yet. So so I think there's going to be some surprises down the road.
More to come. Well, and that, Andrew, teases us up, because clearly we could have 5 other webinars just digging into the conversations on each one of these topics we've hit on today. I'm going to have to wrap this up. A couple of things before I let you go. One, I do want to say there was a ton of questions that came in. We're going to make sure all these questions get sent to the FormAssembly teams. You guys have also put your LinkedIn profiles in the chat. So for anyone that would like to connect with these wonderful speakers to continue the conversation a little bit more, please do visit their LinkedIn profiles in the chat. Don't leave folks in the audience just yet, because we've got a little bit more information to cover, and we do have our special guest star locked and loaded in the wings. But Andrew, Elicia, Peter, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was fascinating from the first second.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we're gonna do a quick little staffing change up here. There we go. All right, and let's get our wonderful guest speaker on out here with me, Josh. Come on down. Somebody said I got to do the Price is Right music at the start, so now we're ta-da!
Yeah, I feel like I've been hyped up. Sorry, I'm not Millie. My own dogs I kick out of the room during webinars, but fantastic. Thank you, Jess, for inviting me on. And I want to thank our panelists. I think they can still hear me backstage. Thank you all. The reason FormAssembly sponsors these kind of webinars is because we are a tool for higher education, but we're not the experts. And so people like Elicia and Peter and Andrew, they're who I rely on to hear really like how our tool is helping in the higher ed space. On this slide, you can see we're a very flexible, if you're not familiar with FormAssembly, we're a flexible data collection platform. We make it super simple to speed up forms very quickly, but that's just the beginning. I mean, people use our forms for everything, but what we want to do is help you manage the data at your organization more responsibly. We offer compliant, centralized platforms for collecting and managing data. And as you mentioned earlier, we think of it as across the entire educational journey, from applications to alumni. And Salesforce is really where most of our users send that data. But one of the things that I kept hearing our panelists come back to was that idea of governance, control, especially when it comes to security. And with the topic of AI, keeping data safe, keeping it out of LLMs when it shouldn't be there, and also keeping it out of Salesforce if it doesn't make sense for it to be there. That's what I see a lot of organizations use us for. Beyond Forms, we have process management tools that allow organizations to send data where it needs to go, keep it out of places that it doesn't need to go. And when it comes to security and compliance, even purge that data from FormAssembly, audit access to that data. So, my favorite thing is, yes, we are tools that you can use, but where I see us really, helping is when we're in the hands of experts like Elicia and Peter and Andrew. They're solving problems in the higher ed space, and that's what I really loved hearing today. So, that's why we sponsor these things. We want to inspire you. We want to let you know that tools are out there to help you accomplish, your goals and cover these challenges. If you want to follow up with FormAssembly, head over to formassembly.com. Best thing you can do is talk to our team. They have more experience even than I do. And whether you are, as I saw some of in the audience, whether you're with a new education cloud, implementation, or whether you're in a mature organization, FormAssembly's tools are going to be able to help you out. And we can get you more information, how we can fit into your data journey. And then that's the best way to if you're interested, follow up with us.
I love that. And Josh, I have to thank you. Very heartfelt thanks for assembling such a wonderful crew here today. No pun intended, for form assembling such a wonderful crew here today. Because I feel like, we were able to dig into the real world stories around the impacts that some of these changes can make, both not making those changes and making those changes. And I think that was really fascinating. I want to ask you about, we've got some resources in the docs tab. There's a couple of really cool takeaways. So we've got the mastering data collection in higher ed. That's kind of a neat, like, slide deck style ebook reader kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, buy-in was a big topic of conversation, like helping others around your organization understand how they can use their Salesforce data, not necessarily relinquish control, but start understanding how that data works across the organization. We have some really accessible ebooks, in that documents tab. If you'd like to get something to send across your org, say to someone else at your organization, hey, here's how higher ed data collection works. This is how we need to think about it, because it is about changing hearts. And in some cases, it's that muscle memory. If they're used to working inside of data silos, you need to break them free of that. We also produced a case study with our friend Andrew at Tyndale. If you'd like to hear his story in a published format, that's floating in that docs tab as well. And thank you for providing those. I appreciate that, Jess.
And there's also a chance to book a demo. And we've got that linked in the docs tab. You can also click on this wonderful, I'm such a fan of this news sticker. I don't know why, it just geeks me out. I think it's so fun. So there's the news sticker right there for you. So lots of ways to follow up. Josh, you know what? Just because we've got you here, I'm going to ask you to give us one final wrap up or takeaway thought. If you would like, we learned so much today from our panelists. If there was sort of one key action step or thought that you would want the audience to walk away with, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it was used in a couple different contexts. It's data in is what you're going to get out. So if you bring clean data into your systems, whether that's your CRM, whether that's an AI agent, you've got to think about that. Our mission here is to make you good stewards of your data. Consider your processes, consider the data collection that you do before implementing it. Don't make willy-nilly changes, because as I think Andrew mentioned, you'll pay for it later. Put some thought into it. Make sure your org gives you that space to put some thought in it. And that's what I'd say.
That is a great takeaway. Josh, again, absolutely fantastic webinar. I know we're a little over time, so thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being our grand finale instead of our opening act. So that was fantastic. No, great to have you here. I hope we'll get to see you again.
Thank you, Jess. Appreciate it. And thanks to the audience.
And to everyone out there that asked some great questions, a reminder that we are going to get you answers back. All of your questions are going to the FormAssembly team. You will get responses back. So keep those questions coming in. I know we had to move very quickly today, so there was a lot to cover, and we all kind of got lost. As Elicia said, we got lost in our thoughts because there were so many cool things to explore today. So I'm hoping that we can dig back into some of these topics again. Come back and join us for our next webinar. But as we bring things to a close, I do have a final piece of excitement excitement for all of you. First, if you haven't already visited the Docs tab and gotten those resources that Josh just talked about, please do that right now. Again, it's easy to take all the information in. You think you're going to retain everything, and then you walk away and, you know, a few of the pieces just kind of trickle out. So those handouts are a great way to make sure that you can pull that back into your brain. So grab those docs. I do also want to say that Arena is going to open up a survey. We would love to hear from you. Please do take a second now and fill out that survey. We want to get your thoughts. And the final thing is a prize giveaway. We have a $250 Amazon gift card. You do need to be here live and present at the webinar. Where else would you want to be though, right? This is where it's at. Our winner of a $250 Amazon gift card today is Rosemary Watkins from Alabama. Rosemary Watkins from Alabama. Congratulations. We will follow up with you after we wrap. And with that, on behalf of the Smart Brief team, I want to thank FormAssembly and Salesforce for making this webinar possible, especially to our wonderful speakers here with us today, to Peter, to Andrea, to Elicia, to our guest star, Josh. You have all given us so much to think about. My favorite part of these webinars are really getting to just have these sorts of human conversations, really getting to understand how the information is getting put into work in your organizations and impacting real world people around us, whether it's through our professional lives or maybe we're in the university system in some capacity or we have family members who are. So I think this is a really layered and interesting conversation that we got to engage in today, which, of course, I have to say brings me around to all of you, because my biggest high fives and thank yous are going to our wonderful audience here with us today. The chat was flying. There was so many cool comments. I saw people sharing ideas and stories and resources back and forth. I asked all of you at the start to help me create a collaborative learning environment, and every single one of you stepped up and joined in on that. And I want to really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. We know that the world of higher ed is nonstop. What did Andrew say at the start? He's doing a lot with just him, right? And I'm sure a lot of you resonated with that. You might be one man, one woman shows in your organization. And these days there's so much changing around us all the time that it is very, very important that we make sure we can get the most out of our resources. And that starts with conversations like this. So I want to thank all of you for taking the time. I hope that you're feeling lit up, excited, ready to pull some of these new changes into your organization. Most of all, I hope that I'll get to see you at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.